You too. Thanks for having me.
I
I
know we've
appreciate
had
it.
I know we've had a little bit of a conversation over the phone, and having TC link us up was fantastic.
Yes, yes. He's an amazing man. He really is.
Yeah, I first met TC when I was in his capstone class, and I didn't know much about him. We were just chit chatting throughout the course, and then finally, after the course ended, I emailed him and asked if he wanted to be a guest speaker, and he linked me up with you. And you guys do a lot of cool stuff with your organization.
Yes, we do. We do. The organization is Suicide Prevention Training Institute, and we educate teachers and staff, police officers and police chiefs, firefighters, or any organization that's in need, or actually for veterans too, maybe people who work with veterans to help prevent suicide among this group of people. And you're probably wondering, how does she fit into this? Well, in my family, I've had two suicides. One was my father when I was 25, and one was my twin sister recently on July 5th. And so it was the impetus for me to get involved and to try and help. So I'm on the board of directors of Suicide Prevention Training Institute, and they're an excellent organization. And they can be found at www. I got to look up at it. Educating
Here,
to save lives.
I have the address right here. I can just post it
Oh,
in chat
okay.
real quick. What's up, everybody? We have everybody tuning in. We have Dell. We have David. What's up, buddy? We have Randall, Sammy, everybody in. How are you guys? Hey, I just posted the link to the website in chat. So, guys, if you want to go take a look at it, that would be fantastic. Yeah, it seems as though suicide's been on the rise. It's like
It's an epidemic. It's the second leading cause of teenagers in the United States. And that's something that's so sad to think about. And the police officers, the statistics have grown from, I'm trying to think of what the statistic is. Police officers between 2007 and 2017, the number of suicides went up by, there were more police officers and firefighters that died of suicide than in the line of duty. Now, if you think about that, that's an unbelievable statistic, that more police officers and firefighters killed themselves than they were killed in the line of duty.
what
So,
I found interesting. My mom actually, I told her about the conversation that was going to happen, and she immediately, my mom's awesome support, so she ended up
oh,
sending
good.
me several articles about the rates of suicide, and one of them actually, which was very, very, very interesting, was the fact that in Japan, in 1 month alone, more people took their own life than the coronavirus has taken in the course of 2020.
You're
Is that
kidding.
not mind-boggling?
That's a lot of people. And it's suicide. We're not talking about people that got hit by a train by accident or a train derailment. We're talking about people committing suicide on a basis, a numeric basis that we've never seen before. And that's why Suicide Prevention Training Institute is doing what they're doing to help curb these statistics. I used to be an English teacher, and when I taught back in, I'm going to tell you the year, even though it dates me, back in late 1980s, my students were happy-go-lucky. They were high schoolers, no problems. I now teach at a law school. I'm an adjunct professor, and I teach animal law. These students are on the brink of breaking down every single day, and they come to my office to talk to me about how it's too much and they don't think they can go on with life. And so I'm immediately on top of that. We have a great system to help them.
What's interesting to me is it seems as though there are several routes that people get to that thought process. And what is
Yes.
always what I didn't understand for the longest time is my father committed suicide when I was 4 years old, and I didn't understand why, and it was so weird to think, he left my mom
Right.
with a special needs child and myself. Like, I didn't understand that. And it wasn't until I started getting older and gaining more life experience to realize, life is hard.
Hard.
Life is
Hard.
difficult. And for me, I had to rework the question. And the question
Yes.
wasn't, and this might sound weird, but the question was, it was not why are people committing suicide? It's why aren't.
I
It
know.
it's you have bills, you have debt, you have problems of your own, issues with your families, people dying left and right. It's like, why aren't what keeps someone stable, and how do we get
That's right.
to that point?
That's right. And the statistics are alarming about people who have suicide in their family. They're alarming because of the number of people who commit suicide in the family after someone's already killed themselves. So in my family, you can see it was my father who died at age 51 by suicide. And then my twin sister, 25 years later, she committed suicide. And well, I didn't see it coming, but twinless twins is what we're called. Twinless twins, there's a 80% chance that a twinless twin will die within 2 years of their twin dying of suicide, which is incredible. I have a very good support system, so I'm not going to be part of that 80% of twins that take my own life because my sister died. But it's rampant in society. Teenagers, firefighters, we're all so stressed. All of us are stressed. When you walk in a busy street, I think about this in New York City, and you look at people and you wonder what's wrong in their lives. Just like you said, why aren't people killing themselves? How do they not go and kill themselves? Because today's problems are so much more real than the 1940s and 50s. I mean, we had war in the 40s, early 40s, but we have computers and we have cell phones, and you're always on call, and every phone call that comes in is important. So and maybe your profession is very, very stressful. For lawyers, it's a very, very stressful job. It's been made more stressful over the decades.
Right. And Sammy asked a question, and he said, is it the workload that drives the depression? And, I've thought about this a lot. I've thought about, depression and how it leads to suicide. And the conclusion that I've come to is there are several different routes.
Yes.
And I would love to do some study on this later, but it seems as though there are different versions of depression that gets people to the same point. And what I mean by that is, for example, stress. Stress is one of them, where they're overloaded, where they're too exhausted, they just feel like they can't go. And the other one seems like there's a loneliness pandemic as well.
Yes.
It's people don't feel understood, they don't feel empathized with, they don't feel as though that they have others to support them. And
Right.
even though in a digital age we're more surrounded by people every day more than ever, it's as though we've lost touch with our neighbor.
That's right. I agree with you. We're in such a digital age that has never been seen before. And you can talk to people on the phone, you can Skype or whatever, but what about the neighborhood getting together and having a meal together? The past year, this has been a really bad year, and 2020 is going to go down in the history books is a very seriously bad year. I don't know how else to explain it, but that there are a lot of suicides, and my sister was one of them. Hers was driven by loss of friends who died from cancer, another one in a road biking accident. He was in the woods with his friends, a brilliant cardiothoracic surgeon, and he died hitting a bump in the woods, a root flipped over, fell into a small ravine, not big, but the way he fell cut off the supply to his brain, and the stem of the brain was died first, and then the rest of it died. That was one of my sister's best friends, and so hers was like a slow decline. And then one day, she was missing and gone, and the sheriff's office had to go find her. And it was truly the worst day of my life, missing, my twin for 4 days until they found her body. Was I would never put that on anybody. But suicide, you're right, Dylan. It comes from so many sources. We have too much coming at us. We have too many responsibilities. Even young children who are caring for maybe their elderly grandparents or their parents, or they have to get a job and drop out of school, or they're not doing well in school because they have a learning disability and no one's noticed it, or their friend said something mean to them and they don't know how to get out of it, or the firefighter who says, I cannot go to another fire scene and find a bunch of dead people. There are a tremendous number of sources of stress in our time.
And sadly, it seems that the hardest part is for other people to empathize with it. It's challenging, and that's the hardest part when you become knowledgeable of what suicide really is and how it affects other people, is you start to understand.
Yes.
And you start to empathize with it, and when you do, you realize your own demons. And that's what happened with me, because I started to analyze father, and I started to analyze my friend who committed suicide, and I was like, well, why would they do this? Why would they do this? And as I got older, it turned into a lot of self-reflection, and then I began to understood, why people did what they did, and that was the scariest part.
Right.
When you finally understand, it's not just like, hey, people commit suicide and they're depressed. Like it's not like reading a textbook and I say people commit suicide because of depression and stress and anxiety. It's not like that. No. Once you experience it and you understand it and you empathize with it and you can relate to it, you've had that experience, that subjective reality, it becomes very real.
Exactly. And you just said it. It's subjective. And it's different for everybody. When I had my daughter, I experienced extreme postpartum depression. And I just made sure that she was okay. And I just wanted to kill myself. I wanted everybody out of the house, and I wanted to kill myself. And my good friend came over out of the clear blue and said, I'm worried about you. And she took me to the hospital. And I spent the next 3 weeks at a hospital getting better. God love her for doing that, or my daughter would have no mother, because the thoughts of suicide were tremendous. They were really overwhelming me. I could not be a good mother when she was born because of the hormonal changes and the thoughts that I couldn't do it. I couldn't take care of a baby. I didn't learn anywhere to take care of a baby. And it's not natural for some women to know exactly what to do. I love that there are women that are like, well, you just do this and you pick up the baby and you do this and you feed them this and you change them. And I couldn't even do that. So that's my experience with severe depression. But I did get put on meds and have taken them and will take them for the remainder of my life.
Sometimes you know what to do, but you can't do it, or you can't.
That's a good point.
You don't have the energy to do it, and I experienced that a while ago, and I knew the signs, I knew everything, I knew how to get out of it. It's just I couldn't for the longest time until I was just fed up, and you have to do something about it. And it's easier said than done, and I don't think that's what people realize. They'll see people sleeping it off or sleeping the entire day, and they're like, oh, that person's depressed, all they need to do is go exercise and get out of the house, that'll fix it.
Right.
It's
Right.
like, well, yeah, easier said than done. Like,
Right.
I don't want to do anything right now. It rips away your motivation.
You're so right about that. And you do actually want to cover up in bed and not see anybody. Excuse me, not see anybody sometimes, or other people become super agitated, or something leads you to believe, hey, my friend is different, or my sister is different, or my father, he never let on. He was just one day he was there, the next day he was gone. But probably the same in your case. My dad never let on that anything was wrong. So suicide is, and it's so true, that song, suicide is painless, but what it leaves behind is great pain for those survivors of the person who took their life, their friends, their family, their loved ones. We have my sister's cats and she wrote a very long note to the cats about how to take care of them, which was very sweet. But that's the cats don't notice, but well, maybe they did in the beginning because she was a overly protective cat mother. She didn't have children, and she wasn't married at the time, and she took her own life. And I don't blame anybody. People say you should blame the pharmacy for giving her too many pills and the doctor for writing too many pills or whatever it is, but you take the pills, you want to end your life, and that's what she did. My father's death was different, and I don't mind talking about it. He actually jumped off a very tall building in Miami, Florida, and it was tragic. This man, this bigger than life man in our household, an incredibly good father, and left my mother at age 47 as a widow.
Wow.
Yeah, yeah. And my twin, you probably guessed, took too many pills. She took a lot. She took over 200 pills, and went in the woods behind our house. We live on a conservation lot, and found a pretty tree and sat there and took all the pills, and she died. She knew exactly what she was doing because she was a critical care nurse, and then she went to dental school and became an endodontist, which is root canals. And she knew exactly what she was doing and how to do it right.
Guys, if you're listening to this, I just want to say that if anybody listening to this is going through anything, please feel free to reach out to me. You all have my contact information. You all have some form of way of getting in touch with me. Let me know what you're going through. I want to be there for everybody in chat. And if I don't answer, if you call me or I don't answer right away, I will call you back. Just let me know, and I'll always be there for you guys. And my mom's in the chat, and she says, let me get to some of these comments real quick. She says, Dylan, did you read the article I sent you about suicide in Japan? Yeah, we actually talked about that for a minute. Randall says, I've learned to take it one day at a time. My mom says the only way to be sound in mind is to be in Christ. In 2020, I almost took my life. The world is a pressure cooker,
Yeah.
she says. And we have Matt. What's up, Matt? How you doing? Love you, Randall. I mean, I'm 100% serious. I appreciate everybody that.
And if it's a girl and she'd rather talk to a woman, I'm very happy to give out my information too, just in case somebody wants to talk to a female, because I have been there, and on the side where I wanted to kill myself, and also on the side of surviving 2 suicides in my family. So I'm definitely out there for anybody. And Dylan, that's really nice of you to do that, to help your listeners with suicidal ideations.
Well, thank you, thank you. And thank you for extending the offer out for any females or anybody that wants to talk. And Garen, it's all right, buddy. I understand. No worries. He says, "Hey, sorry, I'm not able to talk much." No problem, buddy. I get it. Life comes first. I appreciate everybody that tunes into the stream, but I get it. Life comes first, guys.
Yeah.
But what are your thoughts? I mean, sorry, not thoughts, but so how do you guys organize to train and prevent suicide? How do you guys do that?
That's a great question. We have certified trainers that go through a rigorous training process, and they sit down with the leaders of a group, let's say of the firefighters, so that, or the chief of police, or the human resources department of a company, and they do a 2-day workshop with them. And TC Cooper does that, and he is in charge of the training process. And it's very regimented in that there you do study lessons and things, but you also talk and you also learn the cues to what's going to trigger someone to commit suicide, and then prevention techniques to intervene into that person's life appropriately. Not, hey, pick yourself up by the bootstraps, but truly intervene into their lives in a great way. And then they follow up with that person that needs the extra helping hand. And they also provide, should someone commit suicide within, let's say, the police force, Suicide Prevention Training Institute provides counselors to help people get through the suicide of a comrade. And so it's a incredibly difficult program that he went through to become a trainer of individuals. And that's how it's done. It's done from like the top down to get people to recognize, why is this person acting this way? Or why haven't they been at work for 3 days? Or, you know, what's going on? Or they know something's going on in their life and they're acting differently. So they help you find the signs of suicidal ideations and then help prevent it. And then if it unfortunately happens, they have grief counselors that step up and help with that.
So what's an example of a cue? I know you said that sometimes.
Oh, sure. Someone who never, well, crying or looks depressed, such as not looking up when they talk to people, no eye contact, talking about owning weapons of some sort, and using them in inappropriate ways, such as, you know, well, there's always the gun option, you know, that sort of thing. Another cue would be disheveled dress when someone is not obviously taking care of themselves, and poor performance on the job when they've been a great performer before. There are several cues like that to help. And this also for teachers, so that we can help lower the risk for students committing suicide, because the teenage suicide rate is incredibly high. It's the second leading cause of teenagers is suicide. The second leading cause of death in teenagers in 2019 was suicide. We can't have that. We have to do better. So Suicide Prevention Training Institute goes out and trains teachers and principals on the cues that you will find, and they go through a rigorous process with them, a 2-day process workshop, and they learn what to look for, how to prevent it, how to intervene, and what to do should someone kill themselves and they need help. Maybe a group of students needs help. So it's an open discussion dialogue at the workshop.
So what is it about teenagers that makes them so much more likely?
If you look at the data show that that teenagers are so involved in social media. So through Facebook, through Twitter, and through our cellular phones, We didn't have any of that when I was growing up. But now you can call someone names on Facebook or say a outright lie about them, and it disturbs that teenager to the point where there's no turning back for them. Also, so that's a big pressure cooker. We have violent games on TV, on the television, where you have the console and you're doing violent games, and it tends to lead to, well, I just shot down 60 of the bad guys' helicopters, and I don't see how it's wrong for me to take my own life. My dear friend, she was my legal secretary for a long time, and she called me the month after my twin sister died, and her dear nephew hanged himself in the garage, and he was 16. We don't know why. Captain of the football team, all that kind of stuff, good student. And the only clue is that his girlfriend came forward and said that they had a big fight a couple of nights before. And so it's the relationships, it's the scenes of violence on TV and in movies and in games. It's the feeling that we're socially distancing ourselves by using Facebook. And people think that that's an oxymoron, but it's not. You're not going out to eat with people. You're not sitting down and having a conversation with someone. You're just saying hi through your phone, through Twitter, through Facebook, or whatever your means are, Snapchat. It's a different universe than when I was growing up. I feel that the students today, especially that they have to do virtual learning, are put in such a difficult position. And I'm very worried about their psyches and their ability to know that they're loved and cared for.
We actually had a teacher come on the podcast a while back. You know, we talked about the ramifications of going digital and what it could do later on for kids' social life. You know, everything like that. But that is a good point. And actually, TC is in chat, and he says most of the time individuals want to be validated. They need to know that the noise in their head is real. We want to teach awareness to the public. You are not alone. And my mom says the article about Japan is profound, and Dell says good discussion. And I want to talk about your friend's nephew, because it's so odd sometimes to think that things can be so colorful and then take a 180.
I know, and yeah,
And it seems as though, and I'm not trying to downplay, either gender's rate of suicide, but it seems as though males tend to hide their suicidal ideations more. Is that true, or?
I believe it's true. There's almost a stoic aspect of it because they didn't know that he had any clue that he was going to hang himself. And I've had so many people talk to me in the past 6 months, 5 months since my sister died, about, well, in my family, this happened or that happened, suicide happened. And some will say, we saw the signs and we're terribly upset that we didn't help him sooner. But with women, women tend to be more vocal, will seek out friends to help them understand that life is okay, you're loved. But generally, men are they keep to themselves more about their emotions. And so when I rarely hear, of a student saying of mine, although I have had some students talk to me about their suicidal ideations. And one of them was a young man, they were in law school at the time, and he opened up, but not like a young lady would in law school. When I was teaching in the high school, that was so long ago that they didn't have the stressors that they have today. Take this test. Now you have to take another standardized test. And if you want to go to college, you got to take another standardized test and things like that. It's it's so hard on students, but you're right, there is a gender discrepancy. And I think it's because women reach out more and guys still want to look like I'm a tough guy, even though you don't know inside I'm crying.
Right. That seems like it's sort of a gender construct that we sort of need to combat, and we need to make it more socially acceptable to ask for help.
Exactly.
And I think we're on the right track. I've seen a lot of mental health awareness and suicide awareness on social media, and I think we're getting there. We're not quite there
Yes.
yet, but
Right.
I'm optimistic about the future. And one of the statistics that I found most interesting is, even though men are more successful at
Yes.
completing suicides, that does not mean that women don't have suicidal ideations at the same rate.
Correct.
And that was something I found pretty interesting, because when I hear about suicides, it's always, well, the rate of male suicide is so high. It's
Hmm.
this is a epidemic, or in the male community. I'm like, well, I mean, it looks like it's gender neutral. It doesn't really play favorites.
It doesn't, except you're right. Males do complete suicide more often than females. Females will have attempts, but they're crying out for help.
Right.
And hopefully and generally, there's someone there to help them, such as with my sister, um, until she was of the ilk that truly her life was so unbearable. But I don't know why. But she called it the unbearable pain of living. And the males will just act on their ideations of suicide more often than females will. So that, and maybe it's because females talk more to their parents or their friends, um,
Well,
or
from what I read, it's as though it they attempt suicide at the same rate,
correct.
but males attempt more drastic measures,
Yes.
which involves like lethal weapons, like say a
Yes.
gun, where it's more immediate. Where the opposite is not. The opposite is true for females, which it does happen. They do use those things, but it tends to be, and they tend to be less successful at it. Let's say that.
Yes. Yes. They use women tend to use less lethal means of suicide,
Hmm.
whereas men tend to use a gun or hang themselves, or you don't really hear a lot about men overdosing on pills, but you do hear about them taking a overdosing on heroin on purpose to end their life. So there is a there is a discrepancy in how men and women, young men and women, are going about killing themselves.
And
You're
that's
absolutely
why I
right.
bring that point up, because I see a lot of the time people advocating for male mental health. And while I agree that's a good thing, and I don't think we should stop advocating for male health, that's not the point. The point is, I still don't want to neglect from the female mental health, because if you just look at the statistics, you would think that it's not a problem with the females, but you have to look at the attempt of suicide.
Right.
And I bring that point up for that reason specifically, because I've seen a lot of male mental health advocacy, which I don't want to downplay. I think that's what we should be doing, but we should be as well, with the same amount of effort, looking at the female side, gender neutral.
Sure. But it is good that there are ads and there are articles being written about males, that it's
Right.
okay to say, I'm feeling this way.
Yes, and
Or
I think we need to change that social
we need to,
construct.
yeah, we do. We really do. I think you're onto something really big about that because, the breadwinner, if I can't take care of my family, I need to kill myself or something like that. Um, that is almost but the gender roles are changing so that women are becoming, breadwinners and sometimes in their own right, they're the breadwinners of the family instead of the males. And we don't look at that as anything different, but look at it maybe 30 years ago and back, she's the breadwinner and he's not. He's the stay-at-home dad. Wow, what's wrong with your family? Nowadays, it's like that's cool. That's neat.
Yeah.
It's very it's wonderful, and we just need to take care of our younger people and tell them how much love and respect their each person has in their life. That suicide, it leaves this huge gaping hole in people's hearts. And I know they don't want to hear that when they're depressed, but we have great pharmaceuticals, and we have tremendous strides in suicide prevention. So it's out there for them. But sometimes males, they get a thought into their head that they're going to do it, and you don't even suspect it. You just don't suspect it. With my dad, we didn't suspect one darn thing. With my twin sister, it was a shock because she was gone, but it wasn't a shock by the way that she passed away. It was not a shock that she actually committed suicide. So that's just someone who had mental health issues.
Randy says, I try to keep myself busy and not think about my depression. And again, Randy, you have my number. Call me anytime you. My mom saying, I sure hope to see you on another podcast. Thank you. Randy saying, my brother killed himself in '94 at age 14. I haven't seen him since he was 3.
Oh,
Since you were 3, is that what you mean? And then my mom says a hugs issue, a huge issue. I think that's what you mean, Mom. Is in suicide in little children? What? Mom, you know I'm dyslexic. You can't be messing up on me. Let's see.
oh yeah, the suicide for younger, what we call children, what we, even 10, 11, 12 years old are children, and they're finding ways to kill themselves.
She also says, we are also seeing a rise in a person taking their life and then taking the life of their family members. TC just commented, he said, the mission of Suicide Prevention Institute is to bring about community awareness on how to recognize and subsequently prevent completed suicides.
Correct.
And so what we'll do after the podcast is over is we'll go ahead and take, we don't have a big platform on Twitter because I don't use social media like that. The only thing that we're on is YouTube and Twitch.
Okay.
But what we'll do is we'll send it out. We'll post your website's link in our Discord, in our communities, and hopefully we can get some people to spread awareness through your website. And we'll try and get other people to send that website out. So is there a hashtag? Do you guys on Twitter? Is there a specific hashtag you guys use?
I don't know it, but maybe TC can write it for you.
Okay. If not, we'll use the Dream Team hashtag. How about that?
Okay.
We'll use Dream Team hashtag. But one of the things that's really challenged is to think about how to prevent when I'm positive, when I'm in a good mood, when I'm in a good mind state, is trying to be proactive rather than reactive. So sometimes I'm not in a good mood all the time, and I'm not saying that I get down to a super low level, but I try to be aware of how my mood fluctuates. And on any given day, something could happen, something could turn, I could lose my job, I could lose my best friend, I could lose my mom or my brother, and my life could go completely south. So I've thought about the worst case scenario. I've literally thought, what if this happens? What if that happens? Started getting anxiety, and you start to go into this downward cycle, and it starts to get in your head and starts to make you a little self-conscious about, what's the point? You start to become nihilistic because you're like, well, if everything ends, why stop? Why keep going? So when I'm in a good mood, I try to prevent myself from going down those paths by setting up routines, if that's right.
That's right. That's
I,
very good.
I try to set up specific things in my life to help prevent me, or even when I get to that point, which I'll inevitably will, it's it's easier to get out of.
Good.
So,
Good.
so I mean, I think that's the one thing that I think people should be proactive with their own mental health.
Right.
And
Right.
I think people should take the necessary precautions. Even if you feel healthy right now, you might not feel healthy tomorrow. You might not feel healthy 6 months down the line.
Right. And I just want to point this out because of what you just said is that the routine is very good, having routines, but if you get to a point where you're even considering it, um, there's the 1-800 number for suicide.
Yes.
And there's also, if you call 911 and tell them, they will put you in touch with the suicide prevention hotline. And I just want to put this out there for people to know there is always someone to talk to, always. Um, Whether it's you or me or the suicide prevention hotline or the police department will get you in touch with the right people. And they would rather you call 911 and tell them your issue and let them help you than feel like you're being a burden on anybody because all lives matter and it's the truth. I mean, you leave behind a grieving family and friends and animals, because that's one of my big passions, and are animals. So just know that that's always out there for anybody to use.
Right. And Dell says proactive mental health is a great idea. Randy says all the years I had to deal with suicide prevention, I know what my triggers are. So if I get too bad, I call somebody.
Excellent, excellent.
Yeah, I think that that's where we need to go socially is proactive mental health, is figuring out ways that we can prevent people from going past to begin with,
Right.
instead of being reactive. Oh, well, I see somebody having a mental health crisis, or let me reach out to them. We should have saw that coming beforehand, and we should set up social barriers to prevent those things.
You're absolutely right. You're absolutely. We should start at a young age with the suicide talk, which is please don't consider that, but come to me as a parent, as a friend, as a clergy member, as the guy down the street that is a nice guy, or anyone that's in your life that you are having suicidal ideations. Go to someone, talk about it, um, even if you have to dial 911. So that's what they're trying to do through the Suicide Prevention Training Institute. What we're trying to do is to train educators to recognize what's up with that student. What's there's a difference in that student, male or female, and we're trying to get them to reach out. And you learn through the program how to reach out through the 2-day seminar, how to reach out to your students.
You know, I think one of the things that I really respect my mom for, and I know a lot of people find it weird when I say this, but when I was younger, when my father committed suicide, what she did was she didn't hold back. She told me exactly what happened. I mean, I was 4 years old. Some people might
Sure.
be held back against that, and they're like, "Why would you tell a 4-year-old?" But she didn't treat me like I was a child. She said, "Listen, this is what happened. I'm going to be honest with you," and she was upfront with me, and I respect my mom for that because I understood it and I was able to grow up with it. And now that I know what it is, I'm not afraid of it like I would have been
Right.
if she didn't tell me. If my mom had
Right.
sugarcoated it and been like, "No, your dad left," or something like that,
Sure. Sure.
then we would be having a completely different conversation right now.
Right.
I
Right.
I 100% respect my mom, and mom, I know you're in the chat, so I love you and I respect you for that. I think that you did a great job on
That's
parenting me for that.
fabulous. That's fabulous because if you sugarcoat it, what happens when you're having potential suicidal ideations or you're having a bad day? you saw the pain that was in your mom and your brother, and you know the path of least resistance is to kill yourself, but you want to take the other path, which is to reach out to people and say, I need help. And it doesn't make you less of a person. It does not ever make you less of a person to say, can I call you about some feelings I'm having? Nobody will. Nowadays, it's such a common thread between our young people, and our elderly are also committing suicide at a higher rate than they were 10 years ago. And so they're looking into that issue also. So can we get to a suicide rate of 0? I don't know. In the United States, I don't know. I honestly don't. But there's all those television ads that say, suicide prevention, here's the number or whatever. But teaching teachers and firefighters, chiefs of police and the human resources departments what to do to prevent suicide in those arenas, especially children, the teachers, is critical. It's at a critical point right now. We're losing teenagers so much. So many of them are dying by suicide. Yeah.
My mom says everybody is a part of bringing healthy relationships to others.
Right. Parents, friends, coworkers, teachers, your best friend. It's everyone is involved in it and should be involved in helping to reduce the numbers of suicides and to hopefully get the numbers down to more. There's never an acceptable level of suicide. It's 0. There should be no suicide. If in a perfect world, people should not die by suicide.
Randy said siblings?
Siblings.
So when I was actually researching for my capstone, what I was finding was a lot of people that have depression are being overprescribed medication.
Yes.
And it's becoming its own epidemic where people are becoming prescribed medications because we don't have to get into the whole big pharma thing, but
right.
It's a easier alternative to cognitive behavioral therapy. And so I'd like to hear your thoughts on that.
I was of the generation after my father died that Prozac was being distributed like candy. So I was put on Prozac for 9 years. And it did help, but it has some really bad side effects. So when I was pregnant, I stopped taking all of my medications. And the reason was I didn't want it to cross the placental barrier into the baby's bloodstream. And so I had this crash course in suicide when she was born, and I had postpartum depression like nobody's business. And then, so are they overprescribing? Potentially, yes. They are being more careful about the anxiety medications that they're using, such as Xanax and Klonopin and those kind of drugs, because 1, they're habit forming, and 2, they just dull the pain, but the pain always comes back. So there are a new class of SSRIs that are out there, and they're very, very good. So I would rather them overprescribe and save a life on SSRIs than not give the person the medication that they need. I 1 year, about a month before Thanksgiving, I stopped taking my SSRI, which was Lexapro. At the time, it still is Lexapro. And I could not, when Thanksgiving come around, I absolutely could not make Thanksgiving dinner, which is like my favorite thing to do. So I stayed in bed, and my husband said there's something seriously wrong with her. Got back on the SSRI, and it takes about a month, and got back to normal, or my version of normal. And then that's why I think that overprescribing sedatives may be, that's what happened to my twin. She was overprescribed sedatives, and killed herself with those. So I'm upset about that. I'm upset that the doctor wrote the sedatives and the amount that he wrote, and that the pharmacy, which I'm not going to name, but the pharmacy that she went to fill it at, gave her a 90-day supply of those sedatives. 90 days of a sedative that you take twice a day at a very high milligram rate, and that alone is what would have killed her. But she added on some Percocet, some alcohol, and clonidine, which is your blood pressure medication, which suppresses your breathing. So take into account all of those pills, and also a lot of NyQuil. And of course, she died from it. So, but she knew what she was doing because she had a medical background. So my point is that if there's an epidemic of giving SSRIs, I'm okay with that, but I'm not okay with the sedatives, especially since my sister used them as a means to get out of this world.
My father was mom. Am I correct? Xanax. My father was prescribed Xanax, and a lot of the side effects. One of the side effects includes increased suicidal ideations.
Absolutely.
And so that's what got my father, is he was taking Xanax as it was prescribed, and my fear is though it becomes a dam where we're treating the symptoms and not finding a cure or a solution.
Right.
And so what I believed happened was he was taking the medications and all of the suicidal ideations were built up behind a dam. And so when they stopped to work, or they stopped working, the dam just collapsed.
Ugh.
And that's he couldn't take it anymore. And
Was
so
it that they were not prescribed anymore, or that
no, he was
uh,
still taking them.
oh, he's still
He
taking
was still
them?
taking
Okay.
them.
Yeah.
And so that's my fear, is as though it sort of becomes a negative feedback loop. And I believe that medications should be used in the right circumstances, like you're saying. I think they
Yes.
should be used. I think, and this is the analogy I find myself coming to the most, is medications seem to be a flashlight in a dark room where
Yes.
you're trying to find your way out and you just need a flashlight. And the flashlight is the medication.
Right.
But once you find the light switch and you turn on the light, you got to turn off the flashlight.
Right.
And so I don't think my dad turned off his flashlight.
Oh,
I don't.
I see.
I don't think he turned off his flashlight, and he needed more help. And he couldn't find his light switch, so the dam built up and it overflew. I mean, the water came crashing in. His suicidal ideations were right there, just creeping. And next thing
Yeah.
you know, I mean, my I'm coming downstairs as a 4-year-old in our old house, and I see my mom crying on the phone. I'm like, mom, what just happened? I mean, I didn't say it like that, but
Yeah.
but my mom, told me exactly what happened.
I applaud your mother for that.
Yeah, she says that's correct. That's correct. That's what. Okay, so he was taking Xanax, and that he was still prescribed them. Okay.
She loved you so much that she wanted you to know the truth and not hide it from you.
Absolutely.
That takes a lot of bravery. I commend her for that.
My mom has been a fantastic mom, and I don't mean to toot your horn on stream, but I will. She has raised a special needs child, and myself while working a full-time job after her husband committed suicide. So my mom is a Wonder Woman, a true Wonder Woman, and I love you. And Mr. TC in chat saying, in response to Gina, yes, it is a family secret. However, we are attempting to break tradition by bringing about community awareness.
Yes.
Yes. Yes, he had become addicted to Xanax and he needed more in order to cope. So he built up a tolerance.
Oh, yeah.
And along with the tolerance, more ideations built up behind the dam.
Right.
And then Randall says, when I was younger, I was on several different medications. I acted like a zombie. Yes.
Yeah. Well, that's why I say the new generation of SSRIs are better.
Right.
Are much better. Yeah. So I'm all for them. If it means saving someone's life.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, I'm for them tremendously. Yeah. But we've got to talk therapy is important. Even if it's your friend, your coworker, talk therapy is very important too. And men are more reluctant to do the therapy because it makes them feel or think they look weak, but it's a necessary part of getting better, of getting over that suicidal ideation at that moment or those moments, is to talk to someone. Just like your mother talked to you, you could talk to your mother at any time, I'm sure, about how you're feeling, how you're desperate or you're upset or whatever it is that Dylan is feeling at that moment. You're getting validation from your mother, your friends. Doing this podcast, you're getting validated by what you're doing, by validating your job, your profession, your love of doing podcasts.
And again, so sometimes not everybody has the same family circumstances that I've been blessed with, and I've been eternally grateful and blessed to have my mom as a support and the family members that I have and the friend group that I have. But I realize that not everybody has that. And so that's what I kind of want to make this podcast is I want people to come in here, have a good time. Not every podcast we're going to talk about something as serious as this. But, some top podcasts will play a game on stream. Some podcasts will talk about video games. Some podcasts will talk about politics to food. It doesn't matter. I just want everybody to feel welcome in here and as though their opinion and their personal experience matters. So if you are new to Daydreams, make sure you hit the subscribe button because we will be creating a family of dream team daydreamers. Yeah, daydreamers. So we'll be creating a family of daydreamers. So and we have Patrick in here saying the question is, why has this become only a problem recently? Perhaps I'm wrong, but mental illness seems much more common now than it has or was in the past. What changed?
What changed is that we are talking about it more now than we ever have. I'm 56 years old, and when I was a child and a teenager and a young adult in college, even through law school, no one talked about suicide. No one talked about suicide. Now people are opening up. There are shows on TV that have suicide in them, so and also commercials about the SSRIs and things like that are on TV. We would never have had those when I was growing up. The commercials were, buy this life insurance or buy these bicycles. It wasn't, by the way, you may have, the need for an SSRI, or I'm feeling blue today. What's wrong with me? You see all the ads. So it is a cultural change in that we are becoming more open about our suicide issues and rates in the United States. And I think it is high time that it's happened. And I think people had suicides in their families, but they hid it as a dark secret 100 years ago, 50 years ago. When I was a child, they hid it. When I was a young adult, it was hidden. it was the secret nobody wanted to tell. And but now I'm on your show today, and I'm talking to you about the 2 suicides in my family very openly, and about my own issues with depression, because it's high time we all did this. And not that you have to go out and talk about it to everybody, but society's becoming more aware of what's going on, and it's not that dark secret anymore.
Right.
And it shouldn't be. It shouldn't be.
I agree with you. I think it has become. I think it's always been there, like you were saying. It's as though that since we're more connected now on social media, it says if the awareness is there now.
Right.
You know, it's always been there, but the awareness is kind of finally tuned in.
Right. Right. And as the public is tuning in to suicide issues, people are more apt to talk about it. My friend told me about the suicide in her family. Now, I can guarantee that 25, 30 years ago, I would not have received that phone call. And my father's death may have been hidden maybe 30, 40, 50 years ago. But my mother did the same thing your mother did, told us exactly what happened. And I'm grateful to her for telling us the truth.
Well, everybody, thank you so much. This has been Miss Jen, and thank you so much for coming on. We have gone over our time. I'm sorry for keeping you so long. I know we only said an hour, but we thank you so much for coming on. And Randall said problem solved, and my mom responding to TC. Patrick, I hope you come back next time. Good seeing you in chat, man. But everybody, thank you so much. This has been Miss Jen, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to post the website in our community spreads and Discord and everything like that. So hopefully we can get some people spreading it on Twitter or whatever social media accounts, so we can kind of get that out there. But thank you, everybody. I really appreciate you all coming out tonight. Miss Jen, I will keep you on here. Let me see if there's somebody on Twitch I can raid. And there is. So if you're on YouTube and you have our Twitch profile, go ahead and head over to Twitch. What we're going to do is we're going to raid my friend Ninja Jinja 45. He is playing a game right now, so we can change the topic. Something a little bit more light. Yeah. So he's playing a game, so go hang out with him. Let me see this. Ninja. This is always the awkward part, guys. I always have to type this in. There we go. Randall, I love you too, buddy. Yeah, don't forget to smash that like button. If you're on YouTube, go ahead and hit that subscribe. I love you all. Thank you for daydreaming with us. #DreamTeam. Bye, everybody.
Thank you. Bye-bye.